Mastery of Music Theory, Book 1, Fundamental Materials, by Brian Kahlenbach. Chapter 1, Pitch. The piano produces a collection of 88 different pitches that are useful for creating music from the Western tradition. By examining the pitch names as they occur on a piano, we can learn a great deal about how our pitch notation system works. Here is a keyboard with some of the notes labeled. The keyboard consists of a long row of white notes as well as 2 and 3 note groupings of black notes that are a bit raised and set back from the white notes. Note that the pattern of 2 black notes alternating with 3 black notes is repeated along the entire length of the keyboard. As you play the pitches from left to right, the frequencies of the notes become higher, and thus the pitches sound higher. On a piano, you can easily hear this by simply playing the keys. But you can also see it by examining the strings inside. Note that the strings get progressively shorter from left to right. The long strings produce fewer sound waves per second, a lower frequency, and the shorter strings produce more sound waves per second, a higher frequency. As you can see, only the first 7 letters of the alphabet are used, from A to G, when naming the keyboard notes, and these letters of the alphabet are then repeated over the entire keyboard. Careful inspection shows consistent labeling of these letters. For instance, the letter C always appears on the white note immediately to the left of the 2 black note grouping. And the letter F always appears immediately to the left of the 3 black note grouping. Perhaps the easiest white note to identify in relation to the black notes is the note D, which is always found in the middle of the 2 black note groups. Even young children can learn to remember its location easily. You should try to identify the visual characteristics of all the other pitch letters as well. The labeling of the keyboard is consistent up and down its entire length, with the letters repeating themselves at regular intervals. If you start on the pitch A, calling that number 1, and then count up to the next letter A, you will count 8 pitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In music, we call this the interval of the octave. If you count up an octave from any pitch, you will always get to the same letter name. A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. A. D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. D again. Our notational system for pitch consists of placing individual notes on a 5-line grid called the staff. Both the lines and the spaces between the lines are meaningful locations on the staff, so we should learn to identify them both with numbers. Line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, and line 5. Space 1, space 2, space 3, and space 4. Before placing individual notes on the staff, we must label one of the staff lines with a letter name. This is done by placing one of the 4 standard clefs onto the staff. Once we label one of the notes on the staff, the others can be easily deduced. With a little imagination, you can recognize the clef placed at the beginning of the staff as a fancy letter G that seems to swirl around line 2. This is appropriately named the G clef. It is also called the treble clef to indicate that the pitches are in a somewhat high register. Instruments like the violin, flute, and trumpet read notes using this clef. With the second line now identified as G, we can identify all the other lines and spaces. Remember, both lines and spaces are meaningful on a staff. As we move upward from a line to the next space and then up to the next line, the pitches get higher and advance to the next letter of the alphabet. Similarly, when we go down, the pitches get lower and move backwards through the alphabet. Also remember that only the letters A through G are used, so that when we advance to a higher note than G, we must restart the alphabet on A. Let's look at another clef. The F clef is also called the bass clef because it indicates notes that are in a relatively low register. Instruments like the trombone, tuba, double bass, and cello read notes using this clef. You should try to visualize this clef as a fancy letter F that points to the fourth line on the staff. Once F is identified, all the other lines and spaces can be deduced, just as you did with the G clef. The placement of both the G clef and the F clef are always consistent. That is, the G clef always points to the second line, and the F clef always points to the fourth line. However, the last clef we will learn can be found in two different locations, as shown. If possible, try to visualize the C clef as the letter C, even though it may be odd to view it this way. Keep in mind that these highly stylized renditions of these clefs evolved very gradually over time, and our modern notational system is a culmination of a very long history of musical notation that started in the middle of the 9th century, or even earlier. The first C clef above is also called the Alto Clef, as the notes fit nicely in the range of the alto singer. Likewise, the tenor clef is so named because of its usefulness in displaying notes suitable to the range of the tenor singer. The alto clef indicates that the third line is C. Actually, the exact note designated is middle C, the note that is found roughly in the middle of the piano keyboard. The tenor clef places middle C on the fourth line. The grand staff is a system of two staves that include both the G clef and the F clef. It is used for instruments like the harp and the piano, and it is also useful for us so that we can better understand the relationship between the clefs. The brace on the left side indicates that the two staves are considered as a single unit to be played by one instrument. From the configuration of the staves and their relative clefs, it is clear that the notes on the G clef are higher than the notes on the F clef. In fact, we could plot a continuum of notes from the bottom of the F clef staff to the top of the G clef staff, as shown. Also note the corresponding notes labeled on a piano keyboard. To construct this chart, it was necessary to introduce new concepts. First, see that the notes on the F clef actually extend above the fifth line. This space exists for the note B and helps us to bring the notes upward to connect with the upper staff. Likewise, the notes on the G clef extend below the first line and provide a space for us to write the letter D. To extend even further, a ledger line is drawn above the fifth line of the F clef staff. This short line accommodates only one note and is used to extend a staff either upward or downward. The G clef staff above also employs a ledger line, this time below the staff. The note in both cases is C, specifically middle C. Whether notated above the F clef or below the G clef, this is the same middle C pitch near the middle of the piano keyboard.